Welcome to our Botanica Ditton Park, how to make your own hanging basket. I'd like to hand you over to Dave.
Hello and welcome. My name's Dave Taylor from Nurture Landscapes, and I'm here today to talk to you about how to make a summer hanging basket. As you can see, we've got a lot of materials set out in front of us in this lovely greenhouse. I'm using a 14-inch cage style basket. Some of you may have a wicker basket, something slightly smaller, perhaps something hiding behind the shed at home that you can use, or you may be going out and buying one. They're quite expensive and they are reusable, so please make sure you keep these through the summer. We can replant them in the winter and we can do a similar thing again. I'm going to use a selection of plants that I've picked here. There are other suitable alternatives that you may want to use, and I'll talk about some of those as we go through. It is quite a messy process, so please don't try and do this in your kitchen or your dining room. I don't think your partner will be too happy about that. So try and find an outdoor space where a bit of mess is not too much of an issue, and you can clean it up quite quickly with a brush and so forth. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to take my basket and make sure that the hanging cage is underneath, so it's not in the way of where I'm planting up. And once I've got that on a nice firm area, I've got a nice flat bottom basket here. You might want to have a round one, and if you do, you can always put that in a bucket, and it keeps it nice and stable while you're working. So the first thing I need to do is put in a liner. I'm using a jute liner here, which is sized for the basket. If you wanted to use something a little bit more sustainable, or you wanted to use something a little bit more natural, you can use sphagnum moss. This is available for your garden centres and DIY stores. Ensure that it's ethically sourced. It will say so on the bag. Even better still, if you can go out in the garden, perhaps do a bit of lawn care at the same time, get a light rake through there, pull that moss up, get plenty of it, and you can build that up around the edges and create a natural look. But the jute liner that we're using is a nice and quick and easy process. Particularly if you've never tried one of these before, it's a great way to start off. You'll notice on the liner that there are a series of slots around the edges, and that's where we're going to put our trailing plants in around the edge, and we'll get to that in a moment. What's really important with baskets is the care and looking after them. I'm sure you've got neighbours and friends who've got fantastic baskets, and the reason they look good is because they're well watered. They do dry out very quickly, particularly if they're south facing or you're in a prevailing wind. So to help retain some moisture in there, I'm just taking an old piece of plastic, and all I've done is used the basket as a template, cut it to size, and I'm just going to lay that in the bottom of the basket like so. And that will just help hold moisture in there. We don't want the plastic all the way to the top of the liner because the water won't be able to get out. So this will just act as a small little well and help hold the water in. So once that's in there and I'm comfortable that my slots around the edge are viewable and seeable from the outside, I'm going to go over to my compost. We're just using a standard proprietary compost. If you prefer peat-free, that's fine. Whatever you've got at home, if you've got some compost left in the bag, will do the job just as well. And I'm going to take this compost and I'm lightly filling it into the basket, pushing it around the edges, like so. And I'm going to fill that and lightly press it down. Don't try and push your basket through the table. We want to lightly press it down, not to remove all the air pockets that are in there. And you'll see that the compost is sitting level with the slots that are on the side there, so we can put the plants in the side. So once I'm happy that that's at the level I need, I'm going to take some of my trailing plants, and for this job I'm using some Nepeta. So we've got some quite big Nepeta here. You might buy some smaller ones from a garden centre. Trailing lobelia is quite good, Sophinia. It really is down to your sort of artistic licence. Some people are very shabby chic and like to go different colours, some a bit OCD and like to go all red or blues. You know, whatever your proclivity is, it's your reflection of your personal character. I like Nepeta because it falls down, looks a bit like a waterfall. And what we're trying to do is create tiers within the basket. So we're going to have something that's big and upright in the middle, bushes round and then spills down. So this basket, once it's fully grown, in a couple of months, will probably be about 2 feet so high above there and around 1 feet wide around there. And so you can imagine the size is quite big. And the key to that is preparing your plants, putting them in properly and not overplanting the basket. The Nepeta that we're using here is quite large. You can see that it's come out of a larger pot. Sometimes they come in small little drill plots, but we're using this larger one. And what I need to do to help get this through the side is just tease some of the roots around the edge. It does look quite barbaric, and I'm sure some of you will be shocked and horrified. It is an annual plant, so it's very aggressive in its growth, and it will come back fine. So what we need to do is just tease enough root off there, lightly so. Pop that over there. And then I'm going to lightly press the plant together so that I can take that plant, slot it through the slit in the side of the basket, and push it through the other side. And I want the root and the soil of the plant to sit level on the top of the compost, if you can see that. And the slots are covering the soil underneath, the plant is just sticking through. And you can see the effect that it's creating already. As that plant grows on and fills out around the sides, you'll see it's much, much bigger and fills up all the gaps that you can see. So I'm going to work my way around the basket now. I've already prepared this Nepeta here, so I'm going to take this plant again and slot it in. Don't worry too much at this stage if you've got bits of soil on your leaves, bits of soil on the side of the basket. Once we water it, that'll all get cleaned out. I'm going to take that Nepeta through the sides, and we'll carry that process all the way around. I'm mixing up a little bit here. I'm using a trailing geranium as well, if it can come away. So same process again, I've just teased that root out. It is quite a big plant, so it will take a bit of persuasion to get through. Again, making sure those slots are all closed up so we don't get compost coming through once the basket's in a final position. Just move this over here. Careful not to damage any of the leaves. I'm going to carry that process all the way around, and we're now ready to put the rest of our compost in. Don't be tempted at this stage to overfill your basket. We want it to be about 1 centimetre or so from the top. And you can see here that soil's covered over the compost, covered over the roots from the trailing plants that we put in. And I want to create a slight bold effect in the basket. That way when the water goes in, it filters to the middle. If you're tempted to make it sort of convex, then the water will run off, it will go on your patio, you'll be forever sweeping it up. So if you can get it nice and concaved, again, lightly pressing it down, but not too much to remove the air from there. And we're left with something that looks like this. I always start in the centre, and for my centre plant, I want something that's very upright, that will grow very tall, that's quite showy. I'm using an upright geranium. Fuchsias are quite a good plant as well. If you can get an upright fuchsia, it gives you a very delicate flower and lots of colour. So what I need to do is place that in there, and to do that, I make a hole like so. I'm not wearing gloves while I'm doing this. I find them a little bit tricky to work with, but if you've had a manicure or you're very delicate about your nails, you may want to put some gloves on while you're carrying this out. And as you can see, I popped that plant in there, and the top of the soil on the plant is level with the top of the soil. Don't be tempted to bury them too deep. If you bury the plants, the soil's up above the plant top, it will rot off. So once you've done that, I'm going to lightly press the soil in and fill that gap. So I've got my centre plant. The top tip I can give people for hanging baskets is there's always a temptation here, particularly if you're buying plants a little bit smaller, to put a lot in. It's a very small space for a lot of plants to grow, and they will fill out very quickly. Annuals are very quick growing. So if you can not be tempted to plant too many in here, I'm using 3 around the edges here. If you're using smaller plants, 5 at the most. I've seen people put 10, 12 in here, and then they wonder why it dies quite quickly. They're all competing for the same amount of moisture and nutrients that are in this soil, so you don't want to overcrowd it. I've got a little begonia here. It's got a little bit of a damaged leaf, so I'm just going to pinch that out with my finger and thumb. Tease it out of the plant, and then I'm going to leave it on the top for now because I just want to see how that looks. I've got a Saphinia. Saphinias are great if you want to use them all in a basket for one colour. They're very showy, lots of flower, and some of the better baskets I see are all Saphinias, where they might be all white or purple. Really useful if you've got lots of baskets, you can display lots of different colours. But because we've got one basket and I'm just putting one on my house, I like to have lots of different colours and a bit of variety. So one Saphinia will go somewhere around there. And I'm trying to place them sort of equidistant apart, so a sort of triangle as it were around the edge. We've got small bidens here, again another lovely plant, nice yellow flower, looks a bit like a poached egg. So once I'm happy with that positioning and I think that's going to work in this basket, I can then take them back off and I can start installing around the edge. Making that hole and then gently just pushing it down, so again the top of the pot, or where the plant was in the pot, is level with the top of the compost in the basket. So going around, teasing that soil through. There's a Saphinia in here, like so, and then my final plant at the back. It's quite a quick process if you've got a good station set up to work with. You know, if you've got a good area and a nice firm table, it makes it a lot easier. And my basket is done. Keys to really looking after it longer term are threefold: watering, feeding and deadheading. If you want to really ensure a good flower head on here and a profuse level of flowers, then you can put things like a proprietary liquid fertiliser in. We've got some fertiliser granules here that's slow release, so if you've not got too much time to spend looking after your basket, you may want to put some slow release granules mixed in with the soil. But follow the instructions on the packet for feeding. It's around a week, once a week, that you'll be putting a liquid fertiliser in there, and that will really help the plants fill out. Deadheading, there's lots of different tips and tricks for deadheading. The simplest rule I can give you is if the flower's starting to go over, you want to encourage more flower heads. Use your finger and thumb, pinch that flower stem out the base of where it's coming from, and that will encourage new flowers to grow and you'll get more growth. Watering really is the most tricky thing to get right. If you're, say, south facing and you've got that prevailing wind, the basket will need watering every single day. Other times every couple of days, and the key to check is just to make sure that the soil on top, just shift the first sort of centimetre or so with your finger. If it's moist under there, then it's okay. If it gets any further down than that and drier than that, then you will need to water. I won't water until I put it in position. If you put a lot of water in here, they'll hold about a litre. There's quite a bit of weight there, particularly if you've got your basket higher up. So it's best to put it in the position you want it, hang it in, and then water it. A really easy rule of thumb is once a day. I always say to people, if you take a jug of water with a litre and once a day you pour it in, that's a real sort of take-all effect that should help you keep your basket alive. So watering, fertiliser and deadheading regularly, and you'll have something that looks fantastic in a couple of months. This will last until about the first frost, depending on how sheltered it is in the area. At that point, the plants will start to break down. You want to remove the compost and the plants that are in there, put those in the compost heap or a green recycling bin if you have one at home, and then you can do the same principles for a winter basket. So perhaps something like ivies around the edge, you can use primulas in the middle to create that effect. Okay?